Affairs Committee, where through these jurisdictions I've spent much of my time in Congress very focused on ensuring our nation's security in the face of a rising threat from Islamic extremists and an Iran that continues to threaten Israel and the United States. Keeping the best interest of the American people at the forefront of what I do has been critical to maintaining clarity on these many issues that unfortunately can be drowned in partisanship and gridlock. Over a year ago, as we saw this group called ISIS begin to take center stage in the world, I spoke out strongly on the need for action to prevent this threat from entering our homeland. As a soldier, I know firsthand how important it is to understand and identify your enemy. In the art of war, Sun Tzu says, if you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. If you know yourself, but not the enemy, for every victory gained, you will also suffer a defeat. If you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle. So whether they're called ISIS or Al-Qaeda, Boko Haram, or Al-Nusra, all of these groups are of the same brand of Islamic extremists who attacked us on 9/11 and who continue to wage war against us today. Understanding who they are and the radical ideology that motivates them and their barbaric actions is absolutely necessary for us to build a winning and effective strategy to defeat them. It's not a war that can be won on a single front. In order to truly defeat these extremist terrorists, there must be a three-pronged strategy. First, to take decisive, strategic military action, working with regional partners on the ground. Second, take a country-by-country or region-by-region approach to supporting political solutions that will take away the oxygen that has allowed groups like ISIS to exist and thrive. And third, take actions to counter the radical Islamic ideology that's fueling their terror, which is being inculcated in a new generation of terrorists through madrasas and being used to recruit foreign fighters from around the world. Without a strong and proactive strategy in each of these areas, we can expect this continued rise of extremism around the world with further 9/11 style threats and the possibility of lone wolf attacks on the homeland increasing as we're seeing occurring in other parts of the world. I actually had the opportunity to visit the Middle East about a week ago and just returned, where I saw with fresh eyes the situation on the ground. Our first stop was in Kuwait City, where the day before we arrived there, ISIS claimed responsibility for a suicide bomber who walked into a mosque during Friday afternoon prayers and detonated himself, killing 27 people and injuring hundreds more. Immediately after landing in Kuwait, we went and offered our condolences to the family members of those who were killed in this attack, people who not a day before they were spending time with. Amid their grief, they expressed their deep and sincere gratitude and appreciation for our being there and taking a stand to fight against this common enemy. In Iraq, we spent time both in Baghdad and in Erbil, where what I have long known and have been advocating for was affirmed in person, that we need to strengthen our military partnership with the Kurdish people by providing them with the heavy weapons they need as they continue to show their great success in their fight against ISIS, their troops courageously fighting on the ground every single day, on the front lines, supported by our air cover. They spoke to us about how the Peshmerga are facing heavily armored vehicles filled with explosives. Think 5-ton trucks surrounded by armor, filled to the brim with explosives, driven by ISIS suicide bombers directly into villages and military encampments. People in surrounding communities said that as they see these bombs explode, they felt like it could have been an atomic bomb. The only thing that can stop these attacks from these weapons are heavy anti-tank missiles, which we're not supplying nearly enough of. The Kurds are the only force that we've seen consistently hold its ground against ISIS in Iraq and in Syria, and they currently provide sanctuary and critical humanitarian support to over 2 million ethnic and religious minorities, including the Yazidis and Christians in Iraq, without any support coming from Baghdad. So as you can imagine, the picture was very different when we arrived in Baghdad the next day. Prime Minister Abadi continues to plead to Iran for more support, ensuring Iran's influence in Baghdad is solidified, and that the Iranian-led Shia militia have a run of show throughout his government and around the country. Meanwhile, even though the names have changed, Prime Minister Maliki's sectarian policies of persecuting the Sunni tribes persist, which continues to increase the oxygen that allows ISIS to remain in Iraq in traditional Sunni territories. As a veteran of the war in Iraq, I've seen firsthand this harsh reality of war, that if you don't know and understand your enemy, you can't defeat them. To protect the American people, we must recognize that 9/11, as well as the recent violent attacks that we've seen in Paris and elsewhere in the world, are rooted in this Islamic extremist ideology. That this is as much an ideological war as it is a military war, and that we've got to understand that ideology in order to defeat it. This isn't just about one group called ISIS or another group called Al-Qaeda. It's about an overall threat posed by their radical ideology. Separately, yet right alongside this threat, is another consuming concern in the region and around the world, and that is the ambitions of Iran, especially as they seek to remain a nuclear power even as these negotiations conclude and an agreement has been announced. Before Congress takes a vote on whether or not to lift sanctions on Iran, these details must be examined carefully because, as you know, the devil is in the details. I have long advocated for anytime, anywhere inspections in order to ensure that any potential agreement can actually be enforced. It's easy to say that there's no trust between our two countries, but without that mechanism for verification, then any potential agreement really becomes a joke. Without the IAEA having this open inspection ability on all sites, including military sites, the global community cannot be assured that Iran is complying with any deal. Any sanctions relief must be tied to Iran's compliance to the deal. There are many lessons that are important for us to learn from failed North Korea negotiations in the past, where now we face a North Korea that not only is nuclear armed, but has intercontinental ballistic missiles that continue to grow in their capability. And this is one of them. First, removing sanctions in good faith takes away any incentive for Iran to comply with the deal. And to me, it actually serves as an invitation to break it. The impacts of this deal are real. And it's critical that we learn from lessons of the past. And this is why it's so important that Iran come clean on their past nuclear activities, which they've been dodging for far too long. We all know that Iran has a growing ballistic missile program. We don't want to make the same mistake with Iran that was made with North Korea. The failure to stop the North Korean regime from developing nuclear weapons has resulted in an unacceptable threat to the United States. North Korea's long-range missiles, coupled with their nuclear warhead stockpile, is something that hits home for me personally in a very direct way, where Hawaii and the west coast of the United States sit squarely within the crosshairs of Pyongyang. We cannot let this happen with Iran, which has a much more sophisticated missile system than North Korea, and they're prepared to use it. Tehran has been on a race toward nuclear weapons for years, and now it is our opportunity and responsibility to make sure that that pathway is blocked. Later this morning, actually, I'm going directly from here to a House Foreign Affairs Committee where we will go over this deal from Iran. And as we begin this process of careful examination, it's important that we do examine it carefully, that we do go over these details, not only members of Congress, but the American people. I feel privileged and grateful to have had the opportunity to serve our nation in uniform and to continue that service now here in Congress. And it's in the memory of many of my friends who never made the long trip home that I strive to uphold the warrior ethos that they lived and died by. I intend to carry on in their memory as we all work together in our shared commitment of a strong U.S.-Israel partnership, placing the mission first as we work towards a more secure, stable nation and future. Thank you very much. Aloha. Thank you.